Part 6. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 51. Hee, hiss. Faced with this naked ridicule, the Mohawk not only did not get angry, but instead grinned strangely. It was as slender as a snake letter and had a fork at the front. The tongue came out of his mouth and quickly retracted. "Are you hunters, hee, or prey?" Mohawk jumped off the table and walked towards Kaylan and the others. Dana, however, at this moment, Benson suddenly stopped him. "Don't mess around on the transport ship, it will bring trouble to the consortium." "TCH, boring," the guy named Dana suddenly showed a very disappointed look on his face. After making a very mocking gesture towards Kaylan and the others, he turned around and returned to his seat. Benson glanced at Layton, who had already drawn his gun, and said with some disdain, "We are not the kind of bastards living in the wilderness. We are not going to do anything here. You don't need to be so nervous." "Bah, if you hadn't stopped this skinny monkey, I would have punched a hole in his forehead by now." Layton put away his gun and extended his two middle fingers towards the hunters of the Aurora Consortium. The transport ship had already started, and the propulsion engine made a huge roar. A strong push came from the rear of the ship, which just interrupted the conflict that was about to escalate again. The shock-absorbing system of this transport ship, to be honest, it's really not that good. Layton tightly grasped the armrest of the chair and said with a frown, "This is not space. If you want to get rid of the gravity of Alpha Star and fly into the sky, you still need a lot of propulsion, especially during the takeoff stage." The entire passenger cabin tilted over. That was because the transport ship raised its bow and began to raise its height. Generally speaking, warships equipped with anti-gravity devices can achieve smooth vertical takeoff and landing, but the conditions of this transport ship, it is not comparable to a battleship that embodies all the latest technological achievements. It can only use the reaction force of the jet thruster to launch itself into the sky like a rocket from the old era. After reaching a certain height, it can then open its air wings and fly with the help of airflow. Finally, the transport ship reached the predetermined height, the hull angle changed to horizontal again, and the cabin finally became stable. "Kaylan, have you noticed that the guy named Dana just now? Well, in addition to his tongue, his neck and wrists have tiny scales. He should not be a common biochemically modified person, but a genetically modified person. Genetic modification is a very common surgery on Ark, but genetic modification is different. It is a technology that is not yet fully mature. The failure rate and death rate are higher than those of high-level biochemical modification. Moreover, even if it succeeds, it will not be successful after undergoing it. The natural lifespan of genetically modified people will also be greatly shortened, and few people can live beyond the age of 35. This Dana must have undergone this kind of genetic modification, inserting a gene fragment from a snake creature into the original human gene, which resulted in such a mutation effect. This technology was once considered a forbidden technique. It was not until humans discovered Alpha Planet that, catalyzed by a strong sense of crisis, control was gradually relaxed. However, despite this, there are still very few people who accept genetic modification. Genetically modified people are not necessarily more powerful than biochemically modified people, but they require lower costs, and many biological companies are willing to provide genetic modification services for free. Compared with precious experimental data, the resources required for surgery are completely worthless. Those who are willing to accept this kind of transformation are often the desperate poor or terminally ill patients. The former want to obtain powerful power for free and make a living through it, while the latter are already dying and want to rely on this kind of transformation. The only way to survive is to survive. According to non-public data from the black market, in the past 50 years, approximately more than 10,000 people have undergone genetic modification. Among them, only a few hundred people have been successfully modified and survived for more than a year after the operation. I didn't expect that they would actually accept a genetically modified person to join the team. Swilajito said with a hint of disgust. Due to various inexplicable reasons, most genetically modified people have very weird tempers. Some are moody, some are cruel and murderous, and perverts and lunatics abound. No normal person would be willing to spend more time with them, let alone treat them as teammates. They are all cannon fodder anyway. They are probably used as disposable consumables. Hound raised his eyebrows and said. No, boss, that Dana should be the core figure of their advanced team this time. Liao Zilang, who had been observing silently, suddenly said this. Why? Kailan and Hound asked at the same time. I recognize the scales on his neck. They come from a sea snake in the Middle Sea. Liao Zilang said. What? Is that skinny monkey fused with the gene fragments of the alpha native creatures? The Hound was slightly out of control. You must know that the success rate of genetic modification surgery has the most direct relationship with the gene fragments to be fused. Using those artificial genes that have been artificialized for nearly 1,000 years, the success rate of cultivated and screened biological genes on Earth is still so low, let alone alpha organisms that have not been thoroughly studied yet. This approach is simply crazier than those exiles who directly transplanted the limbs of indigenous creatures into their own bodies. If you read it correctly, then to him, Zonghai is simply. Leighton whispered. He is like a fish in water. Ian's expression was a little solemn. In the sea, I'm afraid no one can be his opponent. You have to take a look at these things. I just found out. Leighton did not continue, but pushed the pad in his hand to the center of the table. On the screen were several judgment records, the contents of which were nothing more than conflicts between peers, murder and robbery, and the people who were punished in these records were all hunters affiliated with the Aurora Consortium. This group of people simply has a lot of criminal records. Kailan originally thought that the conflict between them and Benson's group would escalate to a physical conflict at most, but now it seems that the matter may not be resolved that easily. Sorry, I was too impatient before and didn't find out the details of this group of people. Leighton said with his head lowered. I don't blame you. At least this transport ship is much faster than a plane, Kailan said while patting Leighton's arm comfortingly. He glanced at Benson, who was leaning back in his chair with his eyes closed, and he had already made up his mind. Since he had offended someone to death, if they met underwater, he would probably have to strike first. As for Dana, Kailan directly listed him as the number one threat that must be resolved first. Without too much communication, they exchanged glances and basically understood each other's thoughts. The original purpose of their trip was not for the undersea city. The plan to find flesh-eating worms must be kept strictly confidential. As for giving the video of the entire operation to the Aurora Consortium for free, that was even more impossible. It's all bloody trouble, the Hound said meaningfully. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 52. After that, there was peace between Kailan and the others and the advanced team of the Aurora Consortium. Both groups were researching intelligence related to the undersea city, although there was very little useful information in that intelligence. However, the goals of both sides were completely different. Benson and his men wanted to enter the ruins, while Kailan and the others wanted to find the creature known as the flesh-eating worm. Of course, in a place like this, the 4 words flesh-eating worm cannot be spoken directly, but it is not difficult. Just replace it with a few simple passwords. People who don't know, think they are studying the origin of flesh-eating worms. What about the relics excavated around the underwater city? Old dog, where did you get that document? This is the only clue we have now. Is it reliable? The document Kailan was referring to was naturally the video that Hound had sent before. A trustworthy friend, but his authority is not high. The entire container was packed and taken away before the things were even taken out. In fact, no one knows what is inside except those who took away the container. The Hound said seriously, so you know why I opposed this operation in the first place. Thing is their nickname for flesh-eating worms, and container is used to refer to the body in the diving cabin. But we can only try. Before Kaylan could finish his words, a piercing alarm suddenly sounded in the cabin, which made his expression suddenly change. Are they so unlucky? The transport plane they were traveling on crashed, and the battleship searching for them was in trouble. Could it be that even this transport ship couldn't escape? Isn't it? No, this alarm sound is wrong. Leighton was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously pulled out the pistol from his waist. This is not a malfunction alarm or a distress alarm, this is a combat warning. Warning of battle? Kaylan was stunned for a moment. Indeed, the transport ship was flying very smoothly, and it didn't look like something was wrong. But now that they have arrived in the Middle Sea area, they will not encounter the exiles here, right? Or did you encounter some kind of aggressive aerial creature? However, the transport ship did not make corresponding evasive or combative actions, and still maintained its original flying attitude. At this time, a crew member hurriedly ran into the cabin. He put his hands on the door frame and said incoherently to the group of people in the cabin who had become highly nervous because of the alarm, "This is a message for help, a message for help." It was attacked by sea monsters. The Pioneer is still 20 nautical miles away from us. They are asking us for support. The Pioneer is probably the Pioneer icebreaker that Battier worked for. It was a multifunctional hybrid icebreaker built by humans to explore the mid-ocean waters in the 36th year after landing on Alpha Planet. It was equipped with a small nuclear reaction and battleship-level energy crystal converter. The ship is 225 meters long, with a full load displacement of 45,000 tons. It is also equipped with 16 deep-sea diving cabins and 8 fire support speedboats, and 2 Valkyrie 9, an armed helicopter and a vertical transport aircraft, plus a detachable offshore operating platform. In terms of firepower alone, the Pioneer is not inferior to a small battleship, but now, it is actually forced to send a distress signal to this unarmed transport ship. What on earth did they encounter? At the speed of a high-speed transport ship, 20 nautical miles can be reached almost in an instant. Through the bottom observation window under the cabin, one can clearly see the fierce battle on the sea at this moment. No, that can't be considered a battle at all, but a unilateral tyranny. A group of huge serpentine sea beasts are frantically besieging the Pioneer. The 200-meter-long icebreaker is shaking violently like a lonely boat in a storm, and it seems that it will capsize at any time. The deck was littered with bloody corpses, and even the defensive forts on the outside of the ship had most likely been smashed to pieces. The defense system on the icebreaker was almost on the verge of collapse. "That thing is a deep-sea giant eel," a scholar-looking logistics worker on Benson's side exclaimed. "How did they come to the surface of the sea? And there are so many of them." Deep-sea giant eels are creatures that live in the depths of the ocean just by listening to their names. In order to resist the huge water pressure in the deep sea, and to offset this huge water pressure, the external pressure in the deep sea creatures is also very terrifying. If without the water pressure to balance it, they would die from ruptured internal organs, or even explode directly. But now these deep-sea giant eels seem to completely ignore this restriction, which can only mean one problem: the physical strength of these creatures has reached a level that is unimaginable to ordinary people. There are dozens of deep-sea giant eels surrounding the Pioneer icebreaker. The smallest one is 1 meter in diameter, while the largest one is almost several times as thick and probably nearly 100 meters long. Some of them violently beat the hull of the Pioneer icebreaker with their bodies, while others jumped high out of the water and spit out thick arcs of electricity like silver snakes towards the crew and soldiers on the deck. These arcs were extremely powerful. Strong. If it is slightly affected, the whole person will be directly turned into a piece of coke, and there is no chance of rescue at all. The most powerful weapons on the Pioneer are the 2 main guns located at the bow and stern of the ship. But at this moment, both main guns have been destroyed by the deep-sea giant eels. From a distance, the twisted gun barrels look like an ugly piece of steel. Likewise, even the buildings and equipment near the fort were in a mess. There is a large amount of metal debris floating on the sea not far away. Judging from the appearance, it should be the two Valkyrie 9-armed helicopters equipped on the Pioneer icebreaker. What kind of monster is this? Zwilligita couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's too exaggerated." In terms of ferocity, the indigenous creatures on land are still younger brothers to the deep-sea beasts, but what makes me a little puzzled is why these guys who are supposed to live deep under the sea would come to the sea to besiege the Pioneers. No, those people must have used deep-sea bombs to destroy the lair of these monsters, right? Kaylan rubbed his temples with a headache. If the Pioneer icebreaker was sunk, then their operation could be said to be it has already been declared a failure before it officially started. "Boss. We have to find a way to save them," said a hunter from the Aurora Consortium. On one point, their thoughts were consistent with Kaylan and others. "Nonsense. Of course I know we need to save him, but the question is, what should we do to save him?" Benson's expression was a little gloomy. He squatted on the ground, his eyes fixed on the battle below, and the veins on his forehead protruded. "Gun, we have guns dash. Idiot. Open your eyes and see for yourself, is the gun useful against those things?" Benson was so angry that he slapped the hunter to the ground. But I have to admit that what he said is indeed right. There are no powerful weapons on this high-speed transport ship, and the only few self-defense cannons are only 25 mm in diameter. But even the 40 mm on the Pioneer rapid-firing machine guns with millimeter caliber and firing high-explosive penetrator bombs cannot penetrate the tough skin of these deep-sea giant eels. For them, aircraft cannons are probably not even scratching the itch. It has been almost 3 months since the treatment was completed on September 23. I will go back to the hospital for a comprehensive review on Friday the 18th, including a minor bone marrow puncture operation, which will have to be performed in the hospital, so I estimate that it will take 2 days. It's fake, please understand. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 53. Actually, there is a heavy weapon on the transport ship, but... What are you talking about? Benson raised his head in great displeasure. He was about to curse, but he was shocked to find that the person speaking was not his subordinate, but the captain of the material escort unit. I mean, where did the heavy weapons come from? Benson's tone was slightly embarrassed. They were still reluctant to offend the people escorting the troops. No consortium would be stupid enough. Go against the powerful military. Inside the batch of supplies we escorted, there is a harpoon-type heavy cannon. This is special equipment that the Pioneer applied to Ark a month ago. It is specially used to deal with some powerful sea beasts. And this thing, the supplies in the cargo hold were sealed in metal boxes, and Benson was not interested in looking through the supply list, so he didn't even know there was such a thing on the transport ship. He thought the items sent to the Pioneers this time were all regular supplies. It's just that, the recoil of this harpoon heavy cannon is very strong. It must be fixed on a ship or a battleship before it can be fired. However, there is no place to install a base on this transport ship. The escort captain appeared and said awkwardly. "Can we put weapons on the Pioneer?" the huntress named Sharon asked. "I'm afraid not." The escort captain shook his head and pointed to the observation window at his feet. "Let's not mention that we have no way to get close to the Pioneer. Look at the situation on the deck. Those people can't even protect themselves. It's impossible for them to survive. In this case, the assembly of the weapon is completed. That is to say, this weapon is actually of no help to the current situation, right?" Benson looked at the battle situation below with a gloomy face. But this should be the only weapon that can threaten those creatures. The escort captain was silent for more than 10 seconds before he choked out these words. What's the difference between a gun that can't shoot and an iron rod? Benson waved his hand. Let the transport ship directly carry out the satellite launch mission and then return. As for those people on the Pioneer, Humph, yes, if you were stupid enough to send a request for help to an unarmed transport ship, you would not die unjustly. With that said, he took off the walkie-talkie hanging on the bulkhead and planned to let the transport ship leave. At this time, Kaylan finally couldn't help but said, "Wait a minute." Huh? Benson turned his head. "What qualifications do you have to tell me what to do? You have to know that my decision is responsible for the lives of everyone on the transport ship, including you guys. Is it possible that you want to? Are we all going to be buried with the Pioneer? If they want to be heroes, just let them jump from here." "It's none of our business," Sharon, standing behind Benson, said, which immediately caused a burst of laughter from the hunters of the Aurora Consortium. "Yes, jump down and fall from the sky, how majestic it is. Maybe those monsters just ate you to fill their stomachs, and then left? If you're lucky, you might even get a posthumous medal, ha ha ha." Kaylan ignored the sarcasm and ridicule, but looked at the escort captain and asked, "The harpoon heavy cannon can be fired directly, right? The firing mechanism and barrel are pre-installed on the Ark. As long as the cannonball can be loaded into it, it can theoretically be launched. But the problem is that this is not the kind of individual weapon that can be carried on the shoulder. There is no, you can't even aim at the bracket and base." The escort captain sighed. "I think it's better to give up. As long as the base problem can be solved, it can be used, right?" Kaylan asked again. "Are you planning to make a simple base? It's not as easy as you think. The harpoon heavy cannon is different from conventional artillery. Its shell is actually a giant harpoon equipped with a rocket propeller. It passes through 6 high-strength. The steel cable is connected to the base. After hitting the target, the icebreaker's own power is used to drag the target out of the sea. You have also seen that the power of those deep-sea giant eels can even shake the icebreaker. How can the temporarily assembled bracket withstand that? What kind of impact? Maybe you can try." Kaylan turned around and said to Jolajitu and Lighton, "Can you do what I just told you?" "If it's just the tasks assigned to me, that's no problem," Layton said, patting his chest. "I can try." Jolajitu also nodded. "What are you going to do?" The escort captain looked at Kaylan and others in confusion. "I have already said that the base needs to withstand a huge pulling force. Even a modified person cannot resist that force. Let's get the weapons from the cargo hold first. I have to see the actual implementation plan before I can make a conclusion," Kaylan said. "Are you kidding?" The escort captain looked a little angry. "I have to declare in advance that if the equipment is damaged due to your fault, you need to pay full compensation." How much is that thing worth?" 6,800,000 credits. "It's indeed quite expensive, but I also want to ask, if the weapon is damaged, but we successfully save the Pioneer, how will it be calculated? Are you dreaming? Just you guys? Even if I give you 10 harpoon heavy cannons, you may not be able to kill those monsters. I think it's better to save it," Benson mocked from the side. "How will you know if you don't try?" Kaylan asked. "Do you know what your behavior is called? It's called overestimating one's abilities. I really don't know how you can survive to this day," Benson said with disdain. "Besides, just you guys can afford 600 for 800,000. Of course, look, how much is this?" Kaylan showed his account. Just now, he asked Hound, Layton, and others to transfer all their credit points to him. Together, they just made up 7 million credits were awarded. "Haha, this is all your belongings, right? You're not borrowing loan sharks, are you? If this money is gone, you may not even have food to eat, right?" Benson sneered. "You don't have to worry about this. Anyway, We can afford to pay for this, Kaylan said to the escort captain again. Can we try it now? Okay. Seeing that Kaylan could put out so many credits, the escort captain had nothing to say. Anyway, as long as the compensation amount was in place, even if the weapon was damaged, he would not have to bear any additional responsibility. What's more, if these people really succeed, he will also receive a considerable amount of credit. There is no reason for anyone to refuse this kind of business that is sure to make money without losing money. I want to see how you go about it. Benson crossed his arms and sat down on the seat next to him. Kaylan looked at the captain of the Aurora Consortium's advance team up and down, and suddenly said, "You know, you look like one of those stupid villains in cool novels who are about to be slapped in the face." "What do you mean, kid?" Benson, who usually doesn't read novels at all, didn't understand the meaning of Ian's words for a while, but at least he could understand the word sick. "It's not interesting, I just told the truth." Kaylan shrugged, ignored Benson, and led Layton and the others directly to the cargo hold at the rear of the transport ship. The Harpoon heavy cannon is stored in a metal container that is 2 meters wide, high, and 9 meters long, but this is only the main body of the gun. The sight, base, shells, etc. are all installed in a dozen other containers of different sizes. Inside the box. After transferring the $6.8 million compensation deposit to the escort captain, the latter took out the key and opened the container. The main body of the Harpoon heavy cannon is a bit like an ancient giant ballistae, except that the bowstring and mechanism have been replaced by acceleration coils and crystal energy converters, and the grooves used to accommodate the crossbow arrows have become electromagnetic with a metallic luster. Slide rail. At the end of the barrel, there are several bowl-sized slots, which are used to install heat sink rods. Electromagnetic weapons are different from gunpowder weapons. The recoil produced by gunpowder weapons when launched is instantaneous and explosive. As long as you can withstand that force, the projectile of electromagnetic weapons feeds back during the launch process. A continuous and uniform force, just like the high-pressure water gun of a fire truck, requires higher strength for the base and bracket. "It's not that I don't trust you," the escort captain said as he opened another box. Inside the box were 4 harpoons that were more than 6 meters long and shaped like missiles. The front ends were sharp arrows made of nano-alloy. It has expandable barbs and 6 disposable rocket thrusters installed on its tail. There are only 6 shells in total, and there are so many sea beasts besieging the Pioneer. Even if you can kill one with every shot, it will be of no use. When there are not enough cannonballs, why don't we let them get into the barrel of the cannon and launch themselves out? Benson, who was following, leaned against the door of the cargo hold, holding an unlit cigarette in his mouth, silvery white. The lighter crackled between his fingers, and he glanced at Kaylan and the others with a look of gloating. "Don't you like to be a hero? Don't you think you're awesome? Keep dancing, 6 rounds, and I'll see how you can deal with dozens of deep-sea giant eels." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 54. Why should I kill all the giant eels in the deep sea? Who knows? Kaylan suddenly said such a sentence. Huh? What are you talking about? Probably Ian's remarks were so outrageous that Benson even forgot to taunt, and the hand holding the lighter froze in mid-air. "Yeah, Kaylan, these cannonballs are not enough." Layton also whispered from the side, even if we shoot accurately and every shot can hit, then for the Pioneer, considering the situation, it's just a drop in the bucket. "Actually, we only need to hit it once." Kaylan pointed to the observation window at his feet. "Didn't you find that there was a deep-sea giant eel that never attacked the Pioneer?" "What?" Benson frowned, looking confused. Not to mention him, even Layton and others were also confused. "Does this transport ship have a combat assistance program?" Kaylan asked Benson. Although the transport ship itself is not armed, the Combat Auxiliary Program is a necessary program for the core computer installation of the airship, and will most likely be installed. In addition to automatically searching for enemies, automatically marking, and helping the fire control system lock targets, this kind of program also has the functions of assisting takeoff and landing and course correction. This thing is just like the auxiliary plugin installed when playing online games. With its help, even a rookie helmsman who has just graduated from school can drive the airship in style. Yes, what are you going to do? Benson's face became even more suspicious. Let the captain activate the combat auxiliary program for the battlefield below, and mark each deep-sea giant eel independently and track it throughout the entire process, and then project the image analyzed by the computer onto the bottom observation window. You will understand what I mean. Yes, Kaylan said. Do as he says. Soon, the observation window under everyone's feet turned into a projection screen divided by countless auxiliary lines. Every deep-sea giant eel that appeared in the field of vision was marked with a unique mark, and the computer would mark these. The body shape and characteristics of the tagged deep-sea giant eel are recorded. Even if it dives into the water the next second, the mark will remain as long as it returns to sight. Pay attention to the deep-sea giant eel marked No 14. K. Ian's right hand made a few dots on the projection, and the deep-sea giant eel marked 14 was immediately traced with a depth. Red dynamic border. This giant deep-sea eel is neither the largest nor the smallest. It has no special obvious features. It is very inconspicuous and will dive into the water from time to time, Kaylan said, shooting at the camera above his head. Snap your fingers, please calculate its trajectory. He stretched out his hands and pushed inward on both sides of the projection. The entire screen suddenly doubled in size. In this way, the actual sea area in the field of vision doubled. At the same time, the number 14, the movement trajectory of the deep-sea giant eel, was also marked by the computer with fluorescent dotted lines. Most of us were focused on the Pioneer icebreaker and its surroundings, so we didn't notice this cunning guy. But now that its trajectory has been marked, you should also have discovered the problem. This No 14 has actually been wandering on the edge of the battlefield, and has never participated in the attack on the Pioneer, whether it was a close impact or spit arc. Strange, this guy seems like. Leighton said with a surprised look on his face. Like a paddling bastard, the hound picked up what Leighton had left unfinished. But there is one more thing I don't know if you have noticed. Although this number 14 has been paddling, every time it moves to one side of the icebreaker, the frequency of attacks by the deep-sea giant eels on that side will be greatly increased, and the accuracy of the arc attack will also be significantly improved. Pull the screen forward for 4 seconds, no, pull it forward for 4.5 seconds, and then play it back at 0.2x speed. Kaylan waved his hand again, enlarging the picture on the port side of the Pioneer icebreaker several times, and said, pay attention to this deep-sea giant eel number 9. Before number 14 came over, it spit out arcs 3 times in total. The front both times it missed the target, and only the third time it was lucky enough to catch an unlucky crew member, but when the 14th passed by it, it suddenly changed its attack target and directly aimed at the aircraft on the bridge. The cannon fired one shot and the regiment destroyed the cannon group. Of course, there is a certain degree of chance in this situation, but when this accidental event happens many times, do you still think it is accidental? Kaylan looked directly at Benson and asked in a deep voice. You mean, this number 14 is the commander of this group of monsters, right? Being able to become the captain of an advanced team, Benson is naturally not an idiot who doesn't understand anything. Kaylan, let's talk about this. The meaning is really clear. Catch the thief first, capture the king first. Everyone must understand this principle. Kaylan kicked the box containing the harpoon shells nearby. As long as we can hit number 14, the pressure faced by the Pioneer will be much less. There is a high chance that you can persist until the Ark rescues you. Of course, the Pioneer didn't just send a distress signal to their transport ship, it was just that they were the closest to here. As for the rescue team from the Ark, it would take at least several hours to arrive. By then, I'm afraid the Pioneer the number had long since sunk to the bottom of the sea. Then how can you be sure that getting rid of number 14 will have an effect? Isn't there a new leader among these monsters? Benson said, unconvinced. This possibility does exist, Kaylan nodded. Humph, after all, you are just gambling. Then if you don't gamble, do you have any better ideas? Kaylan asked. Benson was immediately speechless. He gritted his teeth and stared at Kaylan for several seconds before slowly saying, I really have no better way, but do you think you can hit that monster with this harpoon-heavy cannon? That's our own business, you don't need to worry about it. Don't forget that you are on the Aurora Consortium's transport ship. If you stand from your consortium's point of view, your senior management must also hope to save the Pioneer, but what makes me a little confused is why, Captain Benson, you seem to want to see the Pioneer sink. Could it be? Kaylan did not continue speaking, but deliberately looked at Benson with a suspicious look. Kaylan, if you put this hat on, it's really heart-wrenching, Hound whispered to the side. Of course I hope the Pioneer can escape, Benson said hurriedly, I just doubt the abilities and motives of you people. There is no problem with that. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 55. As for whether we have this ability, you will know soon. Open the cargo door. Accompanied by the dull sound of the hydraulic piston rod being pulled, a hatch on the side of the cargo hold slowly opened. Suddenly, a strong suction force swept through the entire cargo hold. Fortunately, everyone was prepared, and the containers were also. It was fixed on the floor, and only a few shipping bills posted on the equipment boxes were blown into the air by the strong wind. This scene couldn't help but make Kaylan feel a little familiar, but last time, the situation was much more embarrassing than now. I want to see how you set up this cannon. Benson crossed his arms. Don't forget, there is no room for you to install a base here. I didn't say we needed to use a base, Kaylan said, pointing to the bulkheads on both sides. Lighten, remove the inner wall panels. What are you doing? This transport ship is the asset of our Aurora Consortium, and I will never allow you to mess around, Benson shouted. Don't worry, your valuable property will not be dismantled. We will only use the keel of the transport ship. That won't work either, Benson flatly refused. It's not up to you, Kaylan suddenly smiled at Benson. Just 2 minutes ago, I had sent the entire plan to the senior management of your consortium, and received the approval of the senior management of your consortium. Support. Not only that, they also temporarily granted me the command authority of this transport ship and all the personnel on the ship. In other words, Captain Benson, I am now your immediate boss. This is impossible. Before Benson could finish his words, the communication device on his body beeped. When he took it out and took a look, his expression suddenly changed. This call came from the director of the Aurora Consortium's Ruins Exploration Division. This person was Benson's real direct boss. The content of the phone call was very brief, and Benson could barely speak. He could only respond with yes, and yes. After answering the phone, his facial expression was already quite distorted, but the orders given by the branch director just now could only make him suppress his anger, and asked Kaylan with a straight face, You said that's right, this transport ship is now under your command, but, I really want to know, how on earth did you send the email to the mailbox of the consortium's board of directors? It's just a little bit of hacking. There seems to be a small loophole in your consortium's network security work, but it should have been repaired now, Kaylan shrugged. Layton quickly removed the wall panel on the inside of the cargo hold, and then dug out the buffer filling inside. Several thigh-thick keels appeared in front of everyone. As the main part of the entire transport ship frame, these keels mixed with a large amount of nano-alloy can be said to be the strongest parts of the transport ship. Layton quickly fixed the separated heavy gun brackets to these keels above, and then lifted out the harpoon-heavy cannon. Wait! At this time, the escort captain suddenly stood up, stopped Layton, and said, "This won't work. Although the keel is very strong, yours is just a rigid support with little room for buffering. None, the reaction force generated when accumulating force will directly crush the bracket." "Who said we don't have a buffer anymore?" Zwilligitu, Kaylan waved to the strong Mongolian man on the side, who immediately walked up and a pair of mechanical hooks ejected from his prosthetic feet. The sharp front end pierced the floor directly and firmly grasped two transverse ribs whose strength was second only to the keel. Then, Layton installed a powered exoskeleton on Zwilligitu's body, and then welded the bracket previously fixed to the keel with the exoskeleton. Finally, Zwilligitu opened his arms and directly embraced the entire barrel. Human flesh buffer," the escort captain almost dropped his eyes in shock. "Are you sure there's nothing wrong with you? If you can't hold on, you must speak up in time and ask Asano Akira to take over for you." Kaylan originally wanted to let Asano Akira take action directly. In terms of physical fitness, Asano Akira, who seems to be weak, is actually better than Zwilligitu, has reached several levels of strength, but considering the conflict between them and Benson, Kaylan feels that it is better to hide Akira Asano as a trump card. If he exposes it too early, he will be targeted by the opponent. "Absolutely no problem," Zwilligitu smiled honestly, took out an injection and stuck it on his arm. "This is a muscle strengthening agent that can greatly strengthen the body's muscle strength, but as a price, after the effect of the drug ends, Zwilligitu will enter a state of collapse for several hours." With the injection of the light yellow liquid, Zwilligitu's well-developed muscles arched again, making his entire body look bigger. "Get ready to load." Kaylan and Hound held the heavy harpoon shells and pushed them into the barrel. The two electromagnetic slide rails closed at the same time, sandwiching the shells in the middle. As for the one responsible for aiming, it was naturally Layton. "Big guy, if you miss today, don't mention the word weapon expert to me in the future." "It's embarrassing," the Hound said, patting Layton's back hard. "Okay, the loading is done, and the rest will be handed over. Here you go. I will connect the transport ship's combat assistance system to your prosthetic controller. Don't be too nervous. We have 6 chances. Okay, now I'm going to start charging the accelerator." After Kaylan finished speaking, the switch was pushed up. There was a buzzing sound, and the coil inside the gun body lit up with a layer of faint blue light. A terrifying force was gradually gathering, and Zwilligitu, who was a human body cushion, also arched his body into a C shape. "I can still withstand it, but it's better to hurry up," Zwilligitu said through gritted teeth. "Give me another 5 seconds, that guy dived under the water, damn it." Layton took a deep breath, and he almost put his entire face on the side. Come up here." "Okay, I've got it." "Shoot." The heavy harpoon shot out with a blue-white electric light. In mid-air, 6 rocket thrusters ignited at the same time, and the huge thrust instantly increased the speed of the harpoon by a large margin. Bang! The harpoon shot into the water, causing a huge splash of water dozens of meters high. Several deep-sea giant eels that were relatively close were even knocked over by the ensuing huge waves. However, the number 14 suddenly dived and disappeared from sight just when it was about to be hit. The target is lost. Damn it, Layton couldn't help but curse and disconnected the steel cable connected to the harpoon. "You are too impatient. The opportunity just now was too forced," Kaylan said in a deep voice. He glanced at Zwilligitu and saw that the Mongolian man still maintained his previous movements, but there was already something in the corners of his mouth and nostrils. A trace of blood seeped out. "Zwilligitu, are you okay?" "No. It's okay, at least I can withstand 2 rounds." His tiger's mouth has been completely torn, the entire palm is dripping with blood, and his arms are covered with bruises. Just one shot has already caused him serious injuries. "Hold on. The second shell is loaded and started to charge. P.S. tomorrow, the 18th, I will take a day off with my brothers. It may be 1 day or 2 days as mentioned before. It has been 3 months since the treatment was completed. I need to go for a comprehensive review, mainly a bone marrow puncture operation. You need to be hospitalized. If you can make it in time, you can do it on the same day. If you can't make it, you have to stay in the hospital overnight. Bone puncture is done once every 3 months in the first year of treatment, and the frequency will gradually decrease in the future. This bone puncture is actually quite critical. If the residue is still negative, then everything is fine. If there are signs of recurrence, you may need to prepare for transplantation. My parents are old and not suitable to be donors, and the bone marrow bank can only rely on luck, so I still hope not to go this step. P.S.S. So, please give me blessings. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 56. I will definitely not let this beast escape this time, Layton said through gritted teeth. However, the first attack just now seemed to be a surprise. The number 14 deep-sea giant eel did not appear on the surface of the water for a full 20 seconds. Hurry, hold on, I can't hold on anymore. Jolagito squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Unlike conventional gunpowder weapons that only produce recoil when fired, this electromagnetic weapon, when the force is charged and ready to go, the recoil force will be continuously transmitted from the accelerator. The gauze firearm used by individual soldiers cannot feel this force due to its extremely short charging time and small kinetic energy. But in exchange for if it becomes a heavy weapon that requires a long time to charge, the situation is completely different. Kailan, Hound, and Liao Zilang hurriedly stepped forward, grabbed the frame on the outside of the cannon body, and pressed their bodies against it, trying to bear part of the thrust force for Zwilligito as much as possible. But despite this, there was not much time left for Layton. The powered exoskeleton worn by Zwilligito kept making overwhelmed clicking sounds, and some of the more fragile supporting parts even began to deform. Calm down. You must calm down, Kailan said to Layton. Don't launch as soon as you lock the target. We won't have a second chance. I know, Layton held his breath, his face flushed. His clothes were blown by the strong airflow at the hatch, but his whole body remained motionless, like a sculpture. Layton's robotic arm was disassembled and turned into a part of the bracket, firmly fixed on the nearest keel, while his other hand was hanging on the site's operating screen, doing precise movements. Fine adjustment to the millimeter range. 30 seconds passed, and number 14 still did not appear in the field of vision. Kailan, this won't work. That beast is too smart. It's stalling for time. If it drags it for another half minute, the bracket will definitely be scrapped, the Hound said quickly. Don't worry, there is still a chance, there must be a chance. Kailan suddenly realized that when commanding other deep-sea giant eels, this number 14 seemed to have to surface, and the distance could not be too far. This is why it kept swimming around the entire battlefield. From this point of view, there should be no long-distance communication methods between deep-sea giant eels. As he guessed, when number 14 dived into the water to avoid the attack, other deep-sea giant eels were also attacking. Slowed down, for the Pioneer, these 30 seconds are simply a rare opportunity to breathe. Kailan and the others fought for these 30 seconds for the Pioneer, but there is no more 30 seconds left, and until ARC's reinforcements arrive at Zonghai, it will take nearly 1,000 such 30 seconds. For the Pioneer, they have to delay until reinforcements from the ARC arrive, while for the deep-sea giant eel, they only need to drag it until the bracket of the harpoon heavy cannon is scrapped because it reaches the fatigue limit of the metal. The gap between the two, it's just too much. It is the nature of living things to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. As long as the number 14 deep-sea giant eel hides underwater for a few minutes, Kailan and the others will no longer have any means to restrain it. As for taking this opportunity to send the heavy artillery down, that is even more nonsense. Although the other deep-sea giant eels have temporarily lost their command, as long as the transport ship dares to approach the sea, it will inevitably become their attack target. The bulky Pioneer is much weaker than the transport ship's defensive capabilities. Whether it is an arc attack or a powerful tail flick, it is not able to withstand it. Wait a minute. Kaylan felt a flash of light in his head. Seeking benefits and avoiding harm. No 14 dived into the water to avoid harm, but what about seeking benefits? If you release a big enough bait, can you trick it out of the water? It has been confirmed that number 14 cannot command the deep-sea giant eels on the surface underwater. If there is a huge flaw in the Pioneer's defense at this time, will it be unable to resist the attack? Desire, floating on the surface? The brain capacity of the sea beast is not large. Even as a special individual as a commander, no 14's IQ cannot surpass that of humans. The success rate of this trap will never be low. Can you contact the Pioneer? Yes, the transport ship captain's voice came from the loudspeaker. Have them turn off the engines, drive the ship horizontally, and stop all defensive weapons from firing. What? The captain's tone was full of disbelief. Didn't you hear clearly? Kaylan was a little angry, and he didn't have time to repeat it again. I heard it clearly, it's just. I am the commander, do as I say. Also, tell the Pioneer that this is their only chance, Kaylan almost shouted. Benson on the side shook his head repeatedly. You are crazy, you are absolutely crazy, you will kill everyone on the ship. However, Kaylan had no time to pay attention to him at this time, but was focused on staring at the Pioneer below. The Pioneer sent a message asking for details of the plan. The captain's voice sounded again. Let them execute it immediately. They have at most 15 seconds, no, 10 seconds, Kaylan roared loudly. Time did not allow him to explain too much. Whether this plan can succeed depends on the Pioneers. Are the decision-makers on board decisive enough? For that man, this was definitely a big gamble, risking the entire ship and the lives of everyone on board. It's crazy enough just to think about a completely unknown plan proposed by someone you've never met, but if you hesitate even a little bit, it'll be too late. 5 seconds later, the Pioneer, which had been moving at full speed in an attempt to break out, stopped. Its 6 large propulsion engines were turned off at the same time, and the ship began to roll slowly sideways. At the same time, the remaining defensive forts also became silent. Finally, number 14, which had disappeared from sight for nearly a minute, suddenly appeared in front of the Pioneer on the right side. More than a dozen deep-sea giant eels quickly gathered around it, seemingly preparing to launch a final attack on the Pioneer. Leighton. I caught it. The blue arc crackled, and the second harpoon instantly rushed out of the barrel, turning into a sharp arrow dragging an electric light and piercing the sea. Hit the target, Leighton shouted excitedly, the barb expands. The steel cable is pressurized. Okay, you can pull it. Captain, raise the altitude immediately. We have to pull this thing out of the water, Kaylan raised his head and ordered to the camera. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 57. Chapter 57. I have already had bone puncture done, and I have to say that the feeling of bone marrow extraction is really sore, especially at the anterior superior iliac spine. But the report won't come out until Monday or Tuesday, so to be honest, I've been a little nervous these 2 days. In addition, when I returned to the hospital this time, I heard the doctors and nurses mention a patient with whom I had a good relationship. She was a very cheerful and nice aunt. She had lymphoma. She was in the same ward with me for several courses of treatment. The previous patient, the chemotherapy effect was very good, and all the tumors in the body were eliminated. The original plan was to undergo a stem cell transplant during New Year's Day. I asked the nurse, did XX undergo a transplant? Unexpectedly, The nurse told me that she had left. I didn't react at first and thought she was discharged from the hospital. Then I looked at her WeChat and found an obituary from her son. It was so sudden and I was not mentally prepared at all. He was fine 2 months ago, but he was gone all of a sudden. I just feel an indescribable sadness, as if a comrade who has fought side by side for a long time has fallen. I can't react at all, and I don't even want to believe that this is true. I felt very depressed and my mind was a little messy. But my battle is not over yet, and sometimes I wonder if this will happen to me one day. Just live one day at a time, at least let me finish writing this book. May the deceased rest in peace and the living be strong. I wish you and yourself good health. P.S. Because I have been doing single updates during this period, this book has basically not received any recommendations. If the bone puncture report comes out with no problems this time, I should resume double updates with a guarantee of 4,000 words a day, but with my physical condition, to be honest, it's hard to guarantee anything to everyone. I can only try my best to keep updating. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 58. The transport ship's propeller power was directly turned to maximum, and amid the deafening roar of the engine, the altitude began to slowly climb. Watch the tightrope. The 6 steel cables connected to the harpoon suddenly stretched straight, and the huge force coming from above made the bracket and the keel rattle. Fortunately, this force was evenly distributed by the 6 keels, so there was no need to worry about the keel being pulled. Risk of disruption. As for the steel cable itself, although it looks only as thick as an adult man's thumb, its strength is far greater than the keel of a transport ship. Each cable is made of 4 twisted strands of steel wire rope, and each strand of steel wire rope contains 12 steel wires with a diameter of less than 1 millimeter. These steel wires are not made of ordinary high-carbon steel, but made of 100% containing steel wire. Special ultra-high tensile steel made of 75/75 nano alloy. This material is also called 75 nano steel by the engineers on the Ark. While it has a strength comparable to that of nano alloy, it has excellent toughness and ductility, and the fatigue resistance of the metal itself is also top-notch. The rope core of each strand of steel wire rope is made of or polyurethane rubber, an artificial polymer with the same ultra-high strength. The spaces between the 4 strands of steel wire ropes are filled with sticky silicon aluminum gel to ensure that the 4 strands of steel wire ropes can maintain maximum strength. Uniform force is applied to reduce the possibility of breakage. Tell the Pioneer to focus on the giant deep-sea eel that was pulled out of the sea by the harpoon. Don't save ammunition, Kaylan ordered again. In fact, he didn't need to say much. When the number 14 deep-sea giant eel was lifted into the air, all the weapons on the Pioneer were already in full fire mode, limited by the shooting angle. Many weapons on the deck and bridge cannot attack the sea around the ship, but if it is an aerial target, the situation will be completely different. 200mm armor-piercing cannon, 35mm Spiker rapid-fire railgun, Purgatory heavy flamethrower, 1130 close-in anti-cannon, air defense cluster rockets. The ammunition of these weapons is poured out as if it is free of money. When it came out, no matter how high the physical defense of the deep-sea giant eel was, it was beaten into minced meat almost instantly. Several sections of its dozens-meter-long body were broken and fell into the sea water one after another. Seeing that the plan was successful, Kaylan finally breathed a sigh of relief and sat on the ground leaning on the harpoon cannon support. Leighton and Hound high-fived each other, both of them without any scruples. The ground laughed wildly, and as for Zwilijitu, the Mongolian man simply fainted again. Is he okay? Natasha, who had been following the crowd and said little, pointed to the unconscious Zwilijitu and asked worriedly. It shouldn't be a big problem, it's mainly the side effects of the muscle strengthening agent. Kaylan shook his head tiredly, put his right hand on the ground, and stood up. He walked behind Zwilligito and dismantled the nearly scrapped mechanical exoskeleton in a rather violent way. "Lighten, stop yelling and come here to help," Kaylan said. "Okay, hey, when did this guy faint? I didn't notice it just now," Layton said as he took Zwilligito off the stand. "He fainted just before you fired the gun, but his hand didn't let go at all." Kaylan took some effort to pry Zwilligito's fingers off the handle of the gun barrel one by one. "He's a man," Layton nodded in agreement. At this time, the escort captain suddenly shouted, "Retreat! Those deep-sea giant eels have really retreated." Kaylan lowered his head and looked towards the observation window on the floor. He saw that some of the remaining giant eels in the deep sea dived into the deep sea without looking back after number 14 was killed, and some of them were indiscriminately diving into the deep sea. After launching several ineffective attacks on the Pioneer, they dispersed and fled around. What's more, they actually started biting and attacking each other. Only a handful of deep-sea giant eels were still executing No. 14's orders during his lifetime, ramming the Pioneer without fear of death, but they were soon killed by the Pioneer's defensive weapons. Sure enough, this number 14 is the commander of these giant deep-sea eels. The order to siege the Pioneer was sent from him. Without him, the remaining group of leaderless giant eels would have no hope of attacking the Pioneer. No poses no threat at all. "Damn, it actually worked." Hound touched Kaylan with his elbow with emotion. "I thought you were just bragging at first." "I won't brag about my brother's wives. If we lose, we will all have to drink the northwest wind." Kaylan gasped for air and forced a smile. "Confirm that the threat has been eliminated. Are you going to carry out the original mission?" The transport ship captain's voice came from the loudspeaker again. "Why are you asking me for this? Oh, I forgot that I am the commander of this transport ship now." Kaylan scratched his head. "Perform the original mission, lower the altitude, and prepare to dock with the Pioneer. Oh, by the way, let them prepare the infirmary on the ship. We have a wounded person here. The Pioneer has approved our request and will dock after the deck is cleared, but they said there are too many wounded and there are no empty beds in the infirmary. Well, they also said that even outside the infirmary the corridors are full of people," the captain said a little cautiously, as if he was afraid of irritating Kaylan. "Forget it, just let them prepare a clean cabin." Kaylan waved his hand. Compared with the injured on the ship, Zwilligito's condition was not serious. The reason why he passed out was mainly due to loss of strength. And the side effects of drugs, just sleep can make you feel better. And the captain continued, "The captain of the Pioneer said he wanted to see you. He said he would send someone on the deck to pick you up." "See me? Are you sure you're not mistaken?" Kaylan was slightly stunned. The other party's original words were that he was the architect and executor of the rescue operation just now. "I think, in addition to you, your companions should be included." Kaylan glanced at Benson, who was sitting in the corner with a gloomy expression, and said nothing. He nodded to the camera and said, "I understand, I will come over." The transport ship of the Aurora Consortium slowly descended to almost the same height as the sea surface, and sailed side by side with the icebreaker Pioneer. At the same time, the docking mechanisms on the sides of the two ships engaged with each other, and the doors of the 8 cargo holds opened at the same time, and a box was opened. A box of supplies was transported to the deck of the Pioneer via a conveyor belt. The person who greeted Kaylan was a tall young woman with wheat-colored skin and heroic short ear-length hair. The blood-stained power armor on her body had not been completely taken off. It was obviously from the battle just now. Front-line personnel among them. White heat continued to rise from the open collar of the power armor. She shrank her shoulders, took one arm out of the armor, wiped 2 handfuls on the soft pads on the inside of the armor, and walked towards the front. Kaylan stretched out his hand. "Hello, I am the first mate of the icebreaker Pioneer, Caroline. What is my name?" The first mate on the Pioneer is actually such a young woman? And he was still fighting on the front line wearing power armor, which made Kaylan a little surprised. After hesitating for a moment, he took Caroline's outstretched hand. Kaylan. Mr. K? It's an uncommon Chinese surname. Caroline smiled. Thank you very much for your and your team's rescue of the Pioneer. The captain is waiting for you in the captain's cabin. Please follow me. Come. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 59. Chapter 59. Sophia Soma. Can I ask what your captain wants from me? Kaylan let go of Caroline's hand. The female first mate's palms were slender and strong, with rough skin and a lot of calluses. She could to sit in the position of first mate at this age. It seems that he has the corresponding ability, rather than his appearance or background. It's mainly to thank you and your companions. In addition, the captain is also very interested in you and hopes to have a chat with you. The smile on Caroline's face was quite sincere. To me, Kaylan was a little puzzled. Let alone meeting him, he had never even had a direct conversation with the captain of the Pioneer. The captain of the transport ship was handling the handover for the whole process. How could the other party treat him? Generate the so-called strong interest? Could it be because of the order that told the Pioneers to give up resistance? However, when he thought that the other party carried out his almost crazy suicide order so decisively, Kaylan couldn't help but feel a little curious about this captain whom he had never met before. Okay, he nodded. The captain's cabin of the Pioneer is located on the second floor of the bridge, one step away from the main control cabin. Unlike the metal gates of other cabins, the door of the captain's cabin is made of dark brown solid wood. From a texture point of view, this should be genuine ebony, not something imitated with artificial polymers. The door frame is decorated with golden patterns in the shape of branches and leaves, and under the feet is a polished marble floor that can be seen with light and shadow. The floor is covered with soft and thick carpets, and an exquisite carved crystal lamp is fixed beside the door. It's just for the captain's cabin. The doorway is filled with a magnificent retro atmosphere, which is in sharp contrast to the simple and technological main control cabin at the other end of the corridor. The Hound did not follow. He, Leighton, and Natasha went to take care of Zaligatu. In his original words, I don't like dealing with those in high positions. If the captain comes to the deck in person, you can consider picking me up. However, he still asked Liao Zilang to stay. In addition, Akira Asano followed Kaylan closely. The two of them can be regarded as the strongest in close combat in this team, and the intention of the Hound is quite obvious. After experiencing the DOS incident, his trust in the ARC management has been extremely low. It was so low that even Leighton couldn't help complaining that he was suffering from severe persecutory delusions. Please come in. Caroline opened the door to the captain's cabin. Hello, hello. Ian's expression was a little stiff. He never imagined that the captain of the Pioneer icebreaker was also a woman, and she was also a stunning beauty. Of course, beauty is not the key. In this era where genetic modification surgery and plastic surgery are extremely common, beauty is not a rare species. The key is youth. This beautiful captain definitely does not look more than 30 years old, even older than her age. The first mate, Caroline, is still young. Whether it is a civilian aviation academy or a military academy, even if you count skipping a grade, you will probably be 25 years old when you graduate. To be promoted to chief mate, you must have more than 5 years of work experience and more than 1,000 hours of driving time. As for shipboard, not to mention if it is long, the requirements will only be higher. Although this is only a rule on an airship, considering that the actual value of the Pioneer icebreaker is higher than that of most airships, there is no way that the position of captain can be handed over to a young woman in her 20s, unless this person has extremely terrifying abilities, or has an extremely terrifying background. Of course, What is even more terrifying is that he has both. This is the captain of the Pioneer icebreaker, MS Sophia Soma. First Officer Caroline introduced to Kaylan. Soma. Kaylan quickly searched for the surname in his mind, and the only one who could match it was the Soma Group, the controller behind the leading companies in the airship manufacturing industry. If this beautiful captain really came from Soma, if it comes to the Ma Consortium, everything can be explained. Hello, Captain Soma. Actually, I don't like people calling me Captain. You can call me Miss Soma, or, you can just call me Sophia. Her voice was very pleasant, and it also carried an indescribable affinity. However, the more it sounded, the more cautious Kaylan became. He knew in his heart that this woman was definitely not a flower vase. Almost every single character is a ruthless character. It is really stupid to judge based on appearance alone. Sophia pushed the frame on the bridge of her nose and stood up from behind the desk. She was wearing a white navy uniform skirt, a white windbreaker-style cloak draped over her shoulders, and her long pale blonde hair was high on the back of her head. Her hair was tied into a bun, revealing a long neck, and a pair of glasses with thin gold frames added a unique charm to her. Okay, Miss Soma. For some reason, Kaylan felt that the oppressive aura common to superiors in the other party was not obvious. Maybe it was because of gender, or maybe because of the other party's attitude. In short, my first impression of Miss Soma was not bad. She put her hands on the table of her desk and leaned her upper body forward slightly. After studying Kaylan carefully for a few seconds, she suddenly said, "Your plan is very risky and crazy, but I have to say that in that case, this is the only way to save the Pioneer." There was no politeness or nonsense, and her second sentence directly got to the point. This no-nonsense momentum was exactly the same as her previous decision. Kaylan is basically certain that the real decision-maker on the Pioneer is Captain Soma. "The premise is that you trust me enough," Kaylan said, "and you can't hesitate for a moment. In fact, I'm also curious about why Miss Soma would turn off the engine so decisively and let the Pioneer cease fire in that situation. If you are in a desperate situation and there is only a glimmer of a chance to survive, even if it is extremely slim, will you give up?" She shrugged. "The Pioneer can't be delayed for long, and it won't be able to wait for the Ark's rescue. The plan was our only hope at that time, even though I didn't know what the plan was. I was betting." Sophia showed a smile that could make any man enchanted. "Fortunately, I won the bet. Actually, I am also betting, but my bet is much smaller than yours." Kaylan couldn't help but twitch his lips. Compared with an icebreaker and the lives of everyone on board, several million credit points are indeed less than one carry. "Caroline should have told you that I came here mainly to thank you for your assistance and for saving my life." Sophia walked around the desk. Her height was almost the same as Ian's. Wearing high heels, Kaylan even had to raise his head slightly to align his eyes with hers. "As a thank you, I can agree to one of your requests." "Any requests?" Kaylan asked with some uncertainty. "Any request. Of course, the premise must be within my capabilities." Sophia nodded. "Really?" Kaylan couldn't help but look at the other party's slender legs wrapped in black stockings, swallowed, and asked with some difficulty. Really feeling Ian's gaze, Sophia's expression stiffened slightly. She subconsciously took a half step back, thinking of something strange in her heart. This guy shouldn't make such excessive demands, right? Probably not. Should I add some restrictions? No, no, if you say that, wouldn't it make you look too arrogant? But what if he really made that request? Do you want to promise him? Not only Sophia, but also the expression on the face of First Officer Caroline on the side became extremely strange. She had secretly decided that if the man in front of her dared to make those demands to the captain, she would beat him up. Afterwards, just explain it as the power armor suddenly lost control. Any request? Ian's eyes first moved from Sophia's legs to her waist, then to her chest, and finally, back to her face. If she made that kind of request, she wouldn't refuse, right? Will it appear that you are going too far? No matter what, Kaylan changed his mind and said directly. I want all the records of previous explorations around the underwater city and ruins, including video files, survey data, analysis reports, and relics or samples fished out from the seabed, all of them. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-San. Chapter 60. Not to mention Sophia herself, even the first mate Caroline on the side had a look of astonishment. Why do you want this? Don't you hunters explore ruins just for money? Why don't you just ask for a sum of money? Or, if you want a share of the Soma Consortium, I can do it. Sophia shook her head in confusion. I can give you 0.3% of the shares of the Soma Consortium. The interest and dividends alone will be enough for you to enjoy the life of the aristocracy for the rest of your life. Yes, you have also seen how difficult it is to deal with these giant deep-sea eels. Such ghosts are everywhere under the sea. Even if you get the information, it will be difficult to enter the undersea city. Caroline the first mate also advised from the side. To be honest, money, tisk, external things like this are actually enough. I chose to become a relic hunter more to satisfy my curiosity and desire to explore, so, let's choose intelligence. Kaylan reluctantly made up a reason. To be honest, even he himself found it difficult to convince himself of this reason. Minus 0.3% of the shares. That is not the shares of a company, but 0.3% of the entire Soma Consortium. What Sophia said is absolutely right. He does not need to transfer these shares at all, and only relies on the income from dividends. It has been able to surpass 99% of hunters, and, without risking any life. In any previous mission, he would have chosen to accept Sophia's suggestion, but not this time. They were not doing this operation for money, and they had never thought about entering the underwater city. What they wanted to save was the life of a brother who had been with them through life and death. But Kaylan can't directly ask the other party to get a flesh-eating worm. Let's not talk about whether the Soma Consortium can get such a thing. Even if they can, I'm afraid they will be targeted by the Security Bureau immediately. That's almost the same as surrendering. At this step, Kaylan and the others can only rely on themselves. The biggest help Sophia can provide them is the information that is classified as highly confidential by the official, especially the things related to that video. For them it's even more important to say. But, Sophia said with a look of embarrassment, I don't have the information you want here either. No, Kaylan was stunned. Aren't you the captain of the Pioneer? I am the captain, yes. All the records and documents of the previous underwater exploration operations were taken away by the Security Bureau. Not only did they not leave any backup, they also gave the captain's people a hush order. But in fact, apart from the staff of the Security Bureau, we really know very little. Sophia said helplessly. Why did the Security Bureau get involved? Kaylan asked. Logically speaking, exploring the ruins should not be under their control. I don't know. Sophia frowned slightly. The Soma Consortium, the family told me not to pay too much attention to this matter, and to cooperate with the work of the Security Bureau as much as possible. That is to say, there are no exploration records related to the undersea city left here? What about the personnel? Are there any personnel who participated in the exploration operation? The relevant personnel have also been taken away. The remaining sailors and boatmen don't know more than me, Caroline added on the side. In fact, there is not much information at all. All that was caught is there were no dead bodies, no living people, they didn't leave any written records, and they didn't bring any relics of the Alpha civilization. The camera equipment they brought was either damaged or lost. Otherwise, the description of the underwater city on the Hunter network would not be the same. It would be a blank slate. The corpse, what the corpse looks like, Ms. Caroline, do you remember? Well, I mean, if we can analyze the cause of death of those people from the corpse, We may be able to predict the death of those people when we go to the undersea city. Be prepared to deal with it, Kaylan asked eagerly. I didn't pay attention to this. Caroline recalled, the autopsies of those corpses were all handled by the Security Bureau, and we can't see the results. Then, is there anything weird about those corpses? Maybe there are any special monsters or traps, Kaylan tentatively asked. He wanted to bring the topic to the video without arousing suspicion as much as possible. On top of the body inside. Actually, those corpses all look the same. The corrosiveness and toxicity of seawater can make them unrecognizable. Most of them were attacked and died by sea beasts. There are all kinds of wounds, such as bites, entanglements, electric shocks, the impact, and part of it was due to damage to the diving equipment. Well, actually, if you go to the deck now and take a look, you will know that the dead are almost the same as those who died in the battle just now. Caroline scratched the back of her head, said. But I remember that there seems to be a special corpse. Caroline, do you still remember? Zofia said suddenly. Which one? To be honest, too many people have died on this boat in the past half-month. I can't remember them all. Caroline smiled at Kaylan sheepishly. The corpse pulled out from the number 6 diving cabin looks like a mummy in a horror novel that has been drained of flesh and blood, but its belly is as swollen as a pregnant woman. Zofia's expression was slightly resistant. After all, such a weird and terrifying scene, no one will feel too comfortable recalling it. Although Kaylan didn't show any expression on his face, his heart was shaken up. The purpose of their trip was for the thing that might be in the belly of the corpse. If it is really a flesh-eating worm, then at least so far, their efforts have not been in vain. Oh. I remember coming. But that guy doesn't seem to be from the exploration team, but an agent from the Security Bureau, but he seems to be the one who has stayed down there the longest, for 4 hours. No, it's 5 hours, Caroline said. 5 hours, Kaylan glanced at Caroline and pretended to be confused. Then what happened to him that made him look like that weird look? I don't know about that. Caroline shrugged with regret. The entire operation process was completed by people from the Security Bureau. Even the first mate like me was not allowed to get close. The body had just been fished out. They were sent to the Security Bureau's special plane. Well, but I remember that the people from the Security Bureau had very strange expressions after seeing the body, and they looked very nervous. Anything else? It's gone. They said the body was taken away. It's a pity, the clue is broken, Kaylan sighed secretly in his heart. Until now, they can only make guesses based on the appearance of the corpse, but what if all this has nothing to do with flesh-eating worms? You seem to care about that corpse. Zofia still noticed something strange about Kaylan and asked. I'm just curious. I've explored many ruins of Alpha civilization, but I've never encountered anything like this. Kaylan quickly covered it up. Actually, sometimes I envy you ruin hunters. Zofia turned around and opened a cabinet next to her desk. It's a pity that the family doesn't allow it. Being able to let me come to the Pioneer is already their biggest achievement. Gave in. Actually, being a hunter is not fun at all, it's very dangerous. Kaylan didn't know how to answer this sentence. He suddenly felt that if they continued to dwell on this topic, their intentions might be exposed. Actually, it's not that there are no clues at all. Zofia took out a keycard from the cabinet. There is one thing that the Security Bureau did not take away. What? The diving cabin is now in the number 9 cargo bay on the bottom floor of the Pioneer. Zofia raised the keycard in her hand. The results of the bone puncture came out, and the residue is still negative. I breathe a sigh of relief and can spend the new year with peace of mind.